Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here with Cyndi Pressler, who has her own consulting business. Why don't you tell us the name of the business and how to get a hold of you if they're interested in learning how to be an assisted living manager?
All right. My company is called ConsultCyndi.com, and it's an LLC. And you can find us by going to sending me an email at info@carehomeconsulting.com. That's the name of our website. You can find that on the web at www.carehomeconsulting.com.
Great.
And send me an email there, and you can schedule an appointment with us. We'll tell you how, and we give free 30-minute consultations for people interested in asking questions and finding out a little bit about who we are and if we can help them or not.
Okay. So before the break, you mentioned Governor Richards and some work that you did for the state of Texas, and that was during the 90s. And I said I would talk about some news programs that I watched during the 90s. Well, during that time, my own grandmother was getting older. Her husband, my grandfather, passed away when he was only 60 years old.
Goodness.
He had pancreatic cancer, and so she was on her own. And from that day forward, she told us that she would have Alzheimer's disease someday. I don't know if she prophesied it or if it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, but anyway, this became her fear for the next 25 years. And part of the fear was because of Dateline 2020 and 60 Minutes. We're all doing the news programs about nursing home abuse and neglect. And so that corresponds with the same period of time you were working with the state of Texas. And so maybe that's why you're so passionate about helping people that want to start assisted living.
It is, Todd. I did get a passion for it. I love history. My dad taught me to love history. And when I was working at the COG, one of my jobs was I had to understand how policy was made. How was it born? How was it written? Who was in charge of that? So I had a lot of opportunity. I had to interpret regs. I had to know the history, the Older Americans Act, Medicare, how all of that worked, how it filtered down from national from the Administration on Aging to local government and in the state level, and how all of those things came to be and why. So that was passionate for me. And then with the opportunity, when I went to the state level, being able to teach, my mother always said you should be a teacher. And I used to hate it because people would ask me on the street, "Are you a teacher?" And inside I would go, "Grr, no, not going to be a teacher." And but I am a teacher at heart. I love education and information. So that was passionate for me. And the fact that it was a program that we were being a part of to create, that hit the creative part of me, my writing and all of that. And we focused a lot on, we had to develop our own workshops, do research, get training and education, and we wrote a lot of our own workshops for training people in how to work with people with dementia. And it was interesting to me because my own grandmother, in her day, there was no place to go if you couldn't stay home except to a nursing home. And I knew she was not really appropriate for a nursing home. She didn't need nursing care, but she couldn't stay at home with us anymore because my mother also had the care of my middle sister who had a disability from birth. So it just became too much. But in retrospect, I look back and Granny, as I called her, did have some dementia because towards the end of her life, I would go and visit. She would think that I was my mom because I look a lot like my mom.
Yeah.
And she thought my first daughter, Sarah, who was 2 or 3 at the time, was me. So she would call me Mary Helen, and she would call Sarah Cynthia. And it always confused me, but interestingly enough, I have to tell this story because it's so sweet. On the day my granny passed away, she was in the hospital, and I was there visiting, but I had to get back home to the children, and I had to leave. My mom was standing beside the head of her bed. Granny was sitting up in the bed, and when I got to the doorway, I turned around and blew her a kiss and said, "Bye, Granny, I love you," and she said, "Bye, Pumpkin." That was my nickname that my granddad gave me. So in that small instant before she passed away, she remembered me.
Yeah.
She knew me. And that was such a gift. It was so sweet.
Yeah,
because
thank you for sharing.
I didn't mind that she called me Mary Helen. I didn't understand why. We just thought it was aging, that everybody that got old did that. It's not true. Not necessarily true.
Right. Okay. Well, that's very touching, but I want to give our listeners some take-home information about how to provide the same care for their loved ones. And you started to get on your soapbox one time when we were talking about assisted living, because there's so much confusion about what assisted living is and what it's not. So tell us, what do you want our listeners to know about assisted living?
I think it's helpful for you to know if you're dealing with aging parents or loved one. It's helpful to know some information. So when you're trying to decide what do you need to do on their behalf or help them understand what they need to do, terminology, you may say, well, that's just semantics, but it's really not. Terminology is important when you're looking for the right living environment or support system for your loved one. So there's a difference between a nursing home, what we call a nursing home or a skilled nursing facility or a long-term care facility. There's an umbrella. Long-term care applies to anything that's long-term care. So that might be an institution, which an institution is, a facility is, a nursing home, a hospital, a rehab center, anywhere where there's going to be skilled care available. That's pretty much the Medicare definition for facility institutional care. So your loved one may need something more that didn't used to exist that now does, that's wonderful. It falls under a category called residential care. The reason it's called residential is in assisted living, personal care home, those types of places. I'm going to get into a couple of other terminologies. That's where a person can go to live that doesn't need nursing care, but they still might need some care with what we call activities of daily living. They might need help remembering to brush their teeth. They may have arthritis and not be able to brush their teeth. They may have dementia and not remember what a toothbrush is. So there's all kinds of varying levels of things that a person might need help with. For example, I have trouble with my thumbs. I have to be careful about holding a heavy skillet on the stove. Do I need help with cooking? Probably eventually. It may be a dangerous activity for me. So there's varying levels of need, but all of those things can be provided in a residential setting, either in your own home or by moving to something called an assisted living. All residential cares are assisted living, whether you're licensed or not. And then there's a lot more detail to get into about what's the difference between a licensed assisted living and an unlicensed assisted living. I don't know how much time I have to go into that, Todd, but maybe you can direct me.
Yeah, well, what I wanted to talk about was the ABCs of assisted living.
Okay.
Because that's how they differentiate the different licenses for assisted livings. There's a type A, a type B, and then the type C. You can talk about why it no longer exists.
Okay.
But let's start with A.
Okay, so a type A community is a community where someone, let me use myself as an example. Maybe I'm not safe cooking anymore, but I've got all my faculties. I don't need help with anything else. Maybe I just don't need to be alone in a home cooking for myself. So maybe I can stay home and get meal service. Maybe I can stay home and the family takes care of me, or we get Meals on Wheels, or a caregiver to come in. Or maybe I don't want to be at home alone anymore. And that's a great time for me to start thinking about moving into an assisted living called Type A. Type A is for that senior who's still pretty independent, are very independent. They might be in a type A community that's an independent living, where they have a lot of socialization. I don't want to take care of my home anymore. I want to be around other people that are like-minded. I want to be somewhere where I've got a cruise ship environment where I can get on a bus with friends and go traveling, or have meal service, but I don't need personal care.
So if it's independent, what level of regulation is needed for that? Why is it regulated at all?
Because any community that's 4 or more residents, whether they're type A, large or small, type B, large or small, they're required to be licensed, and that licensing governs 2 main categories: life safety. Is this community, is this property safe for a person to live in and be able to get out of in case there's an emergency? Is this property safe for a person to receive care?
Okay.
So,
And independent living, you said that they don't need much help.
right. So if you qualify for type A independent, if you can exit in case of an emergency, and you have to demonstrate this, you have to be able to exit on your own within a 13-minute window. That means if it's 2 a.m. and you're asleep and there's a fire, you have to be cognizant and able to wake up, get yourself out safely within that 13-minute window. If you can't, then you're not qualified, you're not eligible to live in independent living under the regulations.
So what would be the higher level of care next?
Next would be a type B, which is the assisted living. So independent living versus assisted, those two words. So assisted means there's someone on duty 24/7. There's someone awake on duty 24/7.
Okay.
There might be a caregiver or person that helps do laundry or whatever at a type A, but they don't have to be there 24/7 and they don't have to be awake.
Okay.
So that's a big difference, because I might be that person at 2 a.m. that's groggy because of medicine I take or whatever, and maybe I use a cane, maybe I don't, but whatever reason, I am not going to be that person that can get out in case there's a fire alarm that goes off. I may wake up and be confused. I might be that dementia person. Might be that person in a wheelchair that doesn't get in and out of a wheelchair by myself. So I need someone on duty that's trained, that knows how to help me exit.
Okay, so that's a type B. Tell us what happened to type C.
Type C was our adult foster care program. It doesn't mean that adult foster care has gone away. It just means that under the rules of adult foster care, they were allowed to have 4 residents. There are a lot of other rules with that and regulations. However, when the rule just recently changed, because they had 4, that kind of put them under the fire safety code, the life safety code of needing to be in a community that was licensed and that was oversighted for life safety, fire safety code, and meeting all those regulations, and they weren't. So they simply made a change and said type C no longer exists. They're all going to be, if you're 4 or more people, you're going to be classed as a type A or a type B, large or small.
Even if you're doing adult foster care.
Yes.
So that leaves some communities or residences that are less than 4 that are totally unregulated?
Yes, they're not oversighted at all. Those are individuals. Maybe it's a nurse, a doctor, maybe it's someone who knows that they can give
hopefully it's somebody that knows what they're doing.
Exactly. So it's usually either someone who's been a nurse that wants to be in their own business and they are confident with their skill level that they can care for those people. It's someone who's been a caregiver for a long time. I could open a 3-person home. I've been a caregiver. Even if I hadn't been one, I could open one and still hire someone if I wanted to.
We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the Alamo.
Okay.
Because today is a special day in history. And then we'll also talk about your CALM program, Certified Assisted Living Manager. Management. Okay, stay tuned.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the Ten Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.